Hello and a very warm welcome. You are watching Gravitas with me, Molly Gambhir. Is Israel preparing to target Iran's nuclear facilities? I ask that question because the Israel-Iran shadow war is taking a dangerous turn with each passing day. After allegedly bombing Iran's diplomatic mission in Syria, Israel, it seems, is planning something bigger. According to a report cited by the Times of Israel, the country has been conducting Air Force drills recently. And what are they in preparation of exactly? Well, the report says Israel is preparing to target Iran's nuclear facilities and other key infrastructure. You see, regional tensions escalated when suspected Israeli warplanes bombed Iran's consulate in Damascus last week, killing 7 people, including Iran's top commander. Though Israel neither confirmed nor denied involvement, both Tehran and Damascus blamed Israel. In fact, Iran also swore revenge for the killing of its military generals. Since then, Israel has been in a state of high alert, bracing itself for any retaliatory strike from its arch-nemesis. They say that if Iran attacks Israel directly, Israel will retaliate by striking targets. But by the looks of it, Israel is not taking any chances. Over the weekend, Israel relocated troops from Gaza's Khan Yunis, in fact, cancelled leaves for its combat units and mobilized more troops for air defense units. And if the latest report about Israel preparing to attack Iranian nuclear plants is accurate, then the world may be staring at a big escalation in West Asia, bigger than the ones previously imagined. It raises the specter of a wider war. Could Israel attack Iran's nuclear facilities? Experts say Israel could. In fact, let me tell you about what happened in the year 1981. In June of that year, the Israeli Air Force bombed an unfinished nuclear reactor in Iraq. It was Israel's most daring airstrike. In the 1970s, Iraq's dictator Saddam Hussein had started work on building a nuclear reactor. Israel, considering it as a big threat, bombed the under-construction nuclear reactor. It was the longest-range airstrike by Israel in a single day. But realistically speaking, what happens when you attack a nuclear facility? Radioactive leak that would result in death and destruction. Simply put, it would be catastrophic. The question is, will Israel go that far? Will the tensions between Israel and Iran take a nuclear turn? Also, what do the numbers look like? Although there is no official data on this, multiple reports suggest that Israel's nuclear stockpile ranges between 80 to 400 nuclear warheads. These warheads reportedly can be delivered in multiple ways by aircraft, submarines, missiles, you name it. We are not saying Israel will use them, but in times of rising tensions, of course, it's worth factoring in the capabilities of the countries. And remember, since the Gaza war erupted, a number of Israeli officials have not only publicly talked about Israel's possession of nuclear weapons, but have suggested how such weapons of mass destruction could be used to target Gaza. So then, in case there is a full-scale regional war with Iran, could things take a nuclear turn, is the question. There's, of course, no way of knowing. Let's talk about Iran for now. Until now, Tehran has avoided directly entering the conflict in West Asia, but it has supported its heavily armed proxies in the region. It has also ramped up its uranium enrichment program. According to the United Nations nuclear watchdog, IAEA, Iran has sped up production of 60% enriched uranium. This is very close to the 90% needed for a nuclear bomb. But the IAEA also states that Iran does not seem to have made the political decision to translate its growing nuclear capability into a weaponization program. And more recently, Iran also attacked an Israeli manned intelligence outpost in Iraq. According to Western media reports, the Islamic Republic has also made its military more immune to first strikes against its key missile and nuclear facilities. Iran and its proxies are believed to be in possession of long-range, high-precision missiles that could easily reach Israeli targets. All this worries the US and its allies. Already, they worry about Tehran's potential to make a nuclear bomb, which the West has long sought to curb. But having the technical ability does not mean that Iran is interested in building a nuclear bomb. Experts also say that even though Iran occasionally issues threats, it's not interested in courting a wider war. Since the war started, experts have been warning that should Israel's moves against Hamas bring it into direct conflict with Iran, the result would be immediate escalation. 6 months later, the possibility of a direct Israel-Iran conflict is looking more and more plausible. Will the shadow war take a nuclear turn? That remains to be seen. Is a war breaking out in the Arctic? At least preparation for the worst is underway. Reports say the United States is contemplating building a weapons storage facility in the Arctic. The question is it in preparation to fight Russia? Now, these are the 8 Arctic countries: Canada, Greenland, Iceland, Norway, Sweden, Finland, Russia, and the United States. 7 out of 8 are NATO members. They consider an armed attack against one member as an attack against all. Remember, Finland and Sweden are the newest NATO members. The Russian President Vladimir Putin's fear has made them join the bloc. And now it is NATO's time to do its bit, to ensure Finland and Sweden are protected, to ensure its weapons are deployed in the Arctic accordingly. Right now, America's APS, or Army Prepositioned Stocks, are placed in 2 sites in Germany, in Dülmen and Menium. Now, there are also spots in the Netherlands, Eigelshoven, Poland's Powidz, Belgium's Zoetendal, and Italy's Livorno. But to defend Finland and Sweden, especially in the middle of the Ukraine war, the US will need to look high north, at the Arctic. And where exactly? Norway is being looked at as a possible option. And how exactly do we know that? Well, meet Major General Ronald Reagan. He is the commanding general for America's 21st Theater Sustainment Command. And he recently said that Norway could be an option for future APS. Could it be near Svalbard? Did you know Norway's Svalbard archipelago is the world's northernmost permanent human settlement? Svalbard, in fact, is also very close to Russian Kola. That's where Moscow has a submarine stationed. Picking a place for weapon storage will not be so simple. Such deals include long diplomatic process. After all, we are talking about placing weapons in another country. It's not simple or small. I mentioned APS, Army Prepositioned Stock. What do you think goes into such stocks? The current European sites have equipment that's worth sustaining an armored brigade combat team. There are also engineers, artillery, military police, medical capabilities. These are huge spaces. The Zoetendal stock site, for example, has 28 warehouses. These have 990,000 square feet of space. Plus, you have an additional 77,000 square yards of outdoor staging, 27 maintenance bays, 12,000 square feet of hazardous material storage, and more. Where in Norway could such a place come up is the question. And if not Norway, then where? Look at some of the places where Russia is stationed. There is the Olengorsk site in the Kola Peninsula. There is also Vorkuta, which is just north of the Arctic Circle. At Ostrovnoye, by the Barents Sea, Russia reportedly has resonance and radar systems. Russia claims this radar system can detect stealth aircraft and objects. In fact, Russia has deployed this radar at the Arctic. It also has runways in the Arctic. Reports claim there are weatherproof enclosures at Russia's thick sea air defense site. You see, the Arctic has been a very important oil and gas sector for Russia. Nearly 20% of the country's GDP comes from the Arctic area. So the country has had its hold over the region for a while now. And over the years, Russia has deployed military resources there. It has refurbished old Soviet bases in the Arctic. And Russia has tested hypersonic missiles in the Arctic. Not too long ago, Chinese and Russians jointly patrolled waters in the Arctic near Alaska. And by the way, in a 2018 declaration, China called itself a near-Arctic power. It designates the Arctic for considerable investment and considers Russia as a potential partner in the Arctic. But that's a story for another day. Today, things are fast changing in the Arctic, to say the least. Polar ice caps are melting. New shipping routes are opening up. And Asia-Europe sea route along the Russian coast could significantly cut the journey time. We are basically looking at around 2 weeks less. The northern sea route is already garnering a lot of attention. And if this route becomes a vital shipping lane, then Russia gets to control almost all of this route. It also gets a huge diplomatic and economic leverage. And the West knows this. There is something else as well it is concerned about. Western experts point that Russia operates a third more Arctic military bases than the US and NATO combined. In other words, it has strategic advantage in the Arctic. And that's not even all. There is also the century-old treaty allowing Russians to live in Svalbard visa-free. So is it the US now trying to play catch-up? Is the NATO trying to match Russian firepower in the Arctic? Last year, the NATO chief was quoted as saying the shortest way from Russia to North America is over the Arctic North Pole. So the strategic importance of these areas has not changed because of the war in Ukraine, quote unquote. You see, what has changed since the beginning of the war is the sense of security among the European countries, one that has nudged Finland and Sweden to join the NATO, and now NATO must get down to work, basically, and prepare to defend these countries. But will it, in the process, end up provoking Russia? Just yesterday, we told you how a Russian ambassador had made some rather harsh comments as far as Finland is concerned. Pavel Kuznetsov, who is Russia's ambassador to Finland, said that Russia would retaliate if NATO-backed nuclear weapons were placed on Finnish soil. Kuznetsov said, and I'm quoting again, "The Finns cannot but realize that such a major provocation will not be left without a Russian response." What about an American weapon storage in the Arctic? How would Russia react to that? Will the fast-moving developments make the Arctic the next flashpoint? And before we take a very short break, let me tell you all about what else is coming up on the other side. Is Pakistan preparing for talks on Kashmir? Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif met the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. The two leaders issued a very interesting joint statement with regard to Kashmir and India. We get you all the details in just a bit. Another student from India has been found dead in the United States. What does this really mean? What's really happening in the United States? Are these students no longer safe? A zombie drug is forcing people in Sierra Leone to dig graves. The country has been forced to declare an emergency. You do not want to miss this story. Also coming up, salaries of Indian CXOs have gone up since the pre-pandemic year. Salaries of CEOs have gone up 40%. In fact, if companies make that much money, why then are they laying off junior and mid-level workers? That report comes up shortly after this break.
Ready to dive into your daily dose of news?
Bringing you what's trending in the West and all that's setting trends in the East.
And all of this served up with a side of insightful banter.
We don't just bring you the latest stories.
We bring you your talking points for the day.
And while you do that, from the busy streets of New York, I will provide you with deeper insights on the developments through the course of the day in the U.S.
And I will be here at the WION headquarters, getting you all the action from the universe of sport. All that you need to know about your favorite teams and players, right here.
The show that keeps you ahead of the global curve. A conversation you'd want to be a part of.
A place where news becomes an engaging exchange.
We bring you stories that impact your present.
This is World DNA.
Join the conversation.
On the next episode of World of Africa, African leaders and global dignitaries mark 30th anniversary of Rwandan genocide as French President Emmanuel Macron receives backlash for stating that France and its allies could have stopped the 1994 genocide but lacked the will to do so. South African government goes hard on corruption just weeks ahead of national polls. Country's parliament speaker is forced to resign. And in an effort to remember and honor Nigerian schoolgirls still missing 10 years after their abduction by Islamist insurgents in Chibok, a film titled Statues Also Breathe is screened. Watch World of Africa at these times on WION. World is One.
And welcome back. Thanks very much for staying on with us. You are watching Gravitas. Let's now shift focus to what's happening as far as Pakistan is concerned. Its leadership refuses to end its Kashmir obsession. It has made talking about Kashmir its only foreign policy agenda, it seems. Of course, India is used to it after years of reminding Pakistan that Kashmir was, is and will always be an integral part of India. New Delhi has moved far ahead of what Pakistan or any other country has to say. Still, it does help when friends of India have her back. Recently, Pakistan was put in its place by one such friend of India. On the 7th of April, Pakistan Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif held an official meeting with Saudi Arabia's Prince Mohammed bin Salman at the Al Safa Palace in Mecca. The joint statement, which was issued a day later, urged India and Pakistan to quote-unquote resolve the outstanding issues between the two countries, especially the Jammu and Kashmir dispute, to ensure peace and stability in the region, quote-unquote. Simply put, both Pakistan and Saudi Arabia emphasized the need for dialogue between Islamabad and New Delhi. The question is this: is this Pakistan's attempt to restore talks with India? You see, India's long-held position on Kashmir has been that it was a bilateral issue between India and Pakistan. New Delhi maintains that there is no question of any mediation or intervention by any third party on the matter. While both India and Pakistan have long-standing friendly relations with Arab countries, including Saudi Arabia, ties with New Delhi and Riyadh have significantly improved under Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Saudi Arabia has maintained a balanced approach over Jammu and Kashmir. While the kingdom expressed concern over India's abrogation of Article 370 in August 2019, it did not explicitly condemn New Delhi's actions, instead referring to it as India's internal matter. But that has not stopped Pakistan from seeking parity with India in terms of locus standi in Kashmir. An untenable position since Kashmir is an integral part of India and there can be no compromise as far as India's unity and integrity is concerned. Moreover, Pakistan is the aggressor. In 2019, Islamabad urged the US to persuade India to start talks on the peaceful resolution of Kashmir issue. This came after then US President Donald Trump offered to mediate between the two countries. However, External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar had made it clear any discussion on the issue, if at all warranted, will only be with Pakistan and only bilaterally. In fact, India has always been willing to discuss all issues with Pakistan. Almost every decade since independence of India, there have been several rounds of bilateral discussions between India and Pakistan to resolve differences. But these discussions have failed because of Pakistan's unrealistic approach to the matter. Just to be clear, in Kashmir, the problem is the cross-border terror emanating from Pakistani soil. And having experienced it firsthand, India has time and again reminded the world that Pakistan is the epicenter of terrorism. And as the situation stands today, New Delhi maintains that talks and terror cannot go together. That means that for any meaningful dialogue to take place between the two countries, Pakistan must first act against terrorists targeting India. Of course, India wants normal neighborly relations with Pakistan, but that can only happen in an environment free of terror, hostility, violence. And from that, and only that standpoint, does Pakistan's role matter as far as Kashmir is concerned. But for the rest of the issues, India no longer takes what Pakistan has to say seriously. It has moved on from Pakistan's obsession with Kashmir. For Pakistan, though, Saudi Arabia's acknowledgement of India's stand on Kashmir should come as a reckoner, a lesson on how to stop poking their nose into someone else's business. After all, in the management of Pakistani public opinion, what Saudi Arabia has to say plays a big role. Perhaps now Pakistan will realize and try to mend its ways. Perhaps now it realizes that it needs to end its obsession with Kashmir. Perhaps it's time it realizes that this obsession is the reason for its economic collapse. It has already lost the battle. It needs to now admit this. Instead of obsessing about its neighbors, the establishment of this cash-strapped nation will do well if it channels its energy into fixing its own house and on the needs of its own people. Now, Pakistan's all-weather friend, China, has become a nuisance for most of its neighbors. Take Japan, for example. Today, 92% of the Japanese consider China a security threat, so much so that a majority of the population supports an increased expenditure on security. Our next report telling you more.
A recent survey found that 92% of Japanese consider China a security threat. But are you really surprised? It's China we're talking about, an aggressor-in-chief. The annual survey was carried out by a newspaper. A year ago, 86% respondents said China was a security threat to Japan. It was 81% in the previous year. The graph is steadily rising, as is Chinese aggression. To top that, Russia's invasion of Ukraine changed a lot in Asia. It made it sit up and take notice. It also made people realize that China could be walking down the same road. It could be taking a cue from Russia and invading Taiwan. What happens then? It is the start of another war, one that is almost certain to draw in the United States. Japan is just a few hundred kilometers away from Taiwan. To top that, it is a US defense ally. Tokyo is bound to get drawn into this war, which is why pacifist Japan has decided to start spending more on national security. Tokyo plans to increase defense-related spending to 43 trillion yen by 2027. That is about 283 billion US dollars. And guess what? 71% of Japanese are actually in favor of improving the country's military capacity. Then there's also the question of economic security. 90% of Japan's fuel and gas comes in via sea. What happens when the sea lanes are on fire? China has pledged to take Taiwan by diplomacy or by force. China views Taiwan as part of its territory, and Chinese leader Xi Jinping wants to achieve what his predecessors have not been able to, which is to bring Taiwan under China's control. It's not just a flare-up in the Taiwan Strait that Japan is concerned about. There are other flashpoints in the waters around Japan. Few hundred kilometers away is the Philippines. Face-off between the Filipino Coast Guard and the Chinese Coast Guard has become the new normal. Chinese boats have been harassing, bullying, water cannoning Filipino Coast Guard and resupply boats. It's all happening near the second Thomas Shoal. This is where the reef is, 200 kilometers from the island of Palawan. China claims the shoal, and it totally disregards the fact that the reef falls actually within the Filipino EEZ, which is the exclusive economic zone. In fact, it is the threat of China that has driven Japan to work much more closely with the US and the Philippines. The three countries recently held their first joint naval exercise in the South China Sea. All eyes are now on Washington, D.C. Later this week, Japan's Prime Minister Fumio Kishida will be meeting US President Joe Biden and Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. at the White House. No points for guessing. China will be on their mind.
Another student from India has been found dead in the United States. Another one. Who was it this time, and what really happened, and how many such cases have emerged this year itself? Let's break it all down for you. His name was Mohammad Abdul Arfat. He was all of 25. He hailed from India's Hyderabad. His father, Mohammad Salim, works at construction sites, and just last year, Arfat moved to the US to fulfill his big dreams. He was pursuing a master's degree at Cleveland State University. But about a month ago, something went wrong. Arfat's father last heard from him on the 7th of March, that too only for a few seconds. Arfat told his father that he was missing his family and friends and that he wanted to come home. His father had reassured him that he could come during his vacation, and if needed, he would send the airfare as well. But Arfat could not come back home. He never will. After that day, whenever Arfat's father tried to contact his son, the phone was always switched off. His only son had gone missing. Some say he was last seen at a Walmart on the 8th of March. That is according to CCTV footage at the store. Imagine the plight of Arfat's family. Their son had gone missing on foreign soil. They had no means to know exactly what was going on. They could only depend on the authorities and wait to hear something. More than 10 days later, on the 19th of March, the family's worst nightmare came true. Arfat's father received an ominous call from an unknown number. The speaker claimed to be a kidnapper. He said Arfat had been abducted by a drug-selling gang. The caller demanded $1,200, that's close to 1 lakh rupees, to release Arfat. Reports say the kidnapper threatened to sell Arfat's kidney if the family did not pay up. Despite all those threats, he did not explain any payment method. Dejected, Arafat's father turned towards the Indian government. He wrote to the External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar, seeking his intervention to find his son. On the 21st of March, the Indian consulate in New York said it was in touch with Arafat's family in Telangana and authorities in the US. The authorities said they were working with the local law enforcement agencies to find Arafat at the earliest. They did find Arafat, but it was too late. Arafat had died in Cleveland, Ohio. How did that happen? The details are not available. The Indian consulate has said it is anguished to learn of Arafat's death and that it is extending all possible assistance to transport his mortal remains to India. My question here is, why is this happening? What explains this? Is there a pattern here? 11 deaths in little over 3 months is not a joke. Just last week, another Indian student named Uma Satyasai Gade was found dead again in Ohio's Cleveland. Abhijit Paruchuru was barely 20. His body was discovered in a car deep within a forest in Boston. Last month, Amarnath Ghosh was shot dead in St. Louis, Missouri. He died on the spot. The 34-year-old was a trained classical dancer, a student of Washington University. Before this, 23-year-old Samir Kamath was found dead in a nature reserve in Indiana. He was an Indian-American student at Purdue University. And that same week, Vivek Taneja suffered life-threatening injuries during an assault outside a restaurant in Washington. The 41-year-old was an Indian-origin IT executive. A week before that, Saeed Mazahir Ali, an Indian student, was attacked by robbers in Chicago.
मैं स्लिप हो गया, 4 जने मेरे को पकड़ के लाता घुसे पंचा सब मारे.
Another 25-year-old Indian student, Vivek Saini, was fatally attacked in Georgia state's Lithonia city by a homeless drug addict. Akul B. Dhawan, an 18-year-old at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, was found with signs of hypothermia. In January, 19-year-old Shreyas Reddy was found dead. He was a student at the Lintner School of Business in Ohio State. Another Indian student named Neil Acharya at Purdue University, Indiana, was confirmed dead days after going missing. In many cases, the authorities have ruled out foul play, that too pretty early in the investigation. But the question is, what explains the trend then? Also, by the way, the country remains the top choice for Indian students pursuing higher education abroad. According to 2023 data, American colleges enrolled nearly 269,000 students from India. This was the highest figure ever and was second only to China. But will you, as a parent, be able to sleep soundly at night after sending your kid to America? Think about it. Let's now talk about what's happening in Sierra Leone. And before I go on, let me warn you that the details could be disturbing. People in the West African country are digging up graves there. Yes, digging up graves. And this has led to an emergency being declared. But why exactly are they doing that? What are they looking for? This is a hunt for human bones, and the reason for this hunt is a drug. Yes, a psychoactive drug that is made from human bones. I know it sounds scary, also bizarre, but this drug is at the heart of a major crisis in Sierra Leone. According to a BBC report, it's got addicts desperately digging up graves for human bones, and the country has declared a national emergency. That is how bad the situation has become. Now, first things first, what is this drug really? It's being called Kush, also being referred to as the zombie drug. And what is it made using? Like I said, human bones, basically ground up human bone, and that is just one of the key ingredients. It comprises of other toxic substances, and its impact can last several hours. Most importantly, the drug is dangerously addictive. Like I said, it's making people exhume skeletons for the production of the drug. That's how desperate it is making the addicts. And that is how disturbing the crisis is. Now, the thing is, the country is no stranger to this drug. In fact, it first came to light around 6 years ago. But things have now reached a point where the impact of drugs and substance abuse, particularly this drug, has led to an existential threat for the country, as per the president. According to the report, the situation has turned so dire that police officers are guarding cemeteries, to stop the addicts from digging up the graves. Imagine that. The president has asked for a national task force on drugs and substance abuse to be set up. It would mainly concentrate on tackling the Kush crisis, and there's also the aspect of mental health concerns because of this drug. Let me tell you why I mentioned that. The report highlights how, according to the Sierra Leone Psychiatric Hospital, between 2020 and 2023, admissions linked to this drug shot up by almost 4,000%. Naturally, the drug menace has sent shock waves across the country, and the authorities are fighting to win the war against the drug. How much do you think an average Indian CEO earns? Let's get straight to the numbers. According to a Deloitte India survey, this figure stands at 13.8 crore rupees. That's $1.6 million. That is how much Indian executives make. And those who also work as promoters earn even more. That is 16.7 crore rupees, or over $2 million. Over half of this amount is linked to short-term and long-term incentives. Before the pandemic, the average CEO pay stood at 9.8 crore rupees. That is $1.1 million. You see, there has been a 40% rise. The CXO pay packets have grown fatter. About 3 out of every 4 CEOs in India now earning more than 5 crore rupees. That makes up for 75% of all CEOs in India. This was 66% in the year 2020. The percentage of those earning between 10 crore and 20 crore rupees has increased from 22% to 27%. And for those earning more than rupees 20 crore, it has doubled from 10% to 21%. It's ironic, to say the least, because during the same period, the tech sector has gone on a layoff spree. Last year itself, around 1,200 companies laid off close to 263,000 employees. This year, in January alone, 91 tech companies fired almost 30,000 employees. In February, 74 major tech firms let go of more than 15,000 workers. Youth unemployment rates are high. Online hiring activity for both hardware and software plummeted by 18% last year. In the October to December quarter, unemployment in India's youths aged 20 to 24 years rose to 44.49%. Why did that happen? One would assume because of an economic slump, but if that was really the case, how did the CEOs end up earning more than ever? It doesn't quite add up. It's not like the firms have not been making profits. They are, but it seems they are handing it all over to the top brass. And the lower level employees, perhaps, are all that they're getting is severance pay, and in some cases, not even that. Consider this, only a handful of companies hold a significant share of the world's wealth. Microsoft accounting for $3.1 trillion, Apple for $2.68 trillion, Nvidia $2.21 trillion, Alphabet $1.84 trillion, Amazon $1.81 trillion, Meta Platforms $1.26 trillion. Yet, over the last few months, Amazon, Microsoft, Google have all laid off workers in India, all while their CXOs have taken home fatter checks. Why is this happening? Is it because of the rise in automation? Artificial intelligence and automation picking up pace in India, in fact, not just in India, but across the world. And with that, many roles in IT are becoming redundant. Earlier in the year, digital payments company Paytm laid off 1,000 employees from its operations, sales and engineering teams, all because of AI-powered automation aimed at cutting 10 to 15% employee costs. At a global level, tech giant Google is reportedly restructuring its 30,000-odd sales teams as its AI campaign manager eliminates the need for human oversight. Sportswear brand Nike has said it will slash hundreds of positions globally amid poor sales and expand automation to save $2 billion over the next 3 years. So you see, companies are cutting costs from the employees, and it seems that they're showering this on the executives. Does pregnancy make a woman age? And if yes, would it even be surprising? Carrying a life in your womb and giving birth is not an easy job. Consider what every woman goes through. The constant fatigue, the fluctuating hormones, the growing weight, countless other things. The pangs of pregnancy have made many women feel older than their years. But now new research suggesting that pregnancy may in fact accelerate the aging process. Certain genetic markers have been in the blood cells of pregnant women. These markers suggest that their cells seem to age at an exaggerated rate, and this adds extra months or even years to a woman's biological age, and it continues to increase as her pregnancy progresses. So what is the solution to this? The process itself, it seems, because another study suggests that this aging may reverse once a woman gives birth, essentially turning back the clock and rewinding time so that mother's cells seemingly end up biologically younger afterwards, especially when a mother breastfeeds her baby. During research, scientists used several different biological age clocks and other measures to analyze the DNA markers in the blood samples. These clocks are actually algorithms which are developed using artificial intelligence programs. They examine the patterns of chemical markers found on the outside of some genes, and these markers accumulate and change in response to our age, health, and lifestyle. The algorithms can use these markers to estimate the relative age of cells. It's often referred to as biological age. Interestingly, it can differ from someone's actual age, and in case of pregnant women, it is found to be older than their real age. How much older? By several months. According to one study, in a different study, the DNA of the blood cells of pregnant women appeared to be as much as 2 years older than it had been earlier. But on the brighter side, the aging seemed to reverse for most of the women within 3 months after giving birth. In general, the patterns of DNA markers soon reverted to an earlier, more youthful state. For some new moms, it even overshot the mark, apparently leaving them biologically younger than before by as much as 8 years. All roads in world sport lead to Paris this summer. The quest for an Olympic medal is the sport's greatest pursuit. But the sportspersons are not the only ones heading for the Games. Kashmir's aqua woman, Mir, is headed to Paris and is the first woman from India to be selected for the jury of the canoeing and kayaking competition. Take a look.
The picturesque Dal Lake in Srinagar is a tourist paradise. But this is no jolly ride. These are water sports enthusiasts hard at work, trying to impress their coach. They want to emulate the local hero, Mir, an India international who has worn the national colours at multiple competitions. Like her wards, Bilkis entered the water of the Dal for the first time at the age of 6. She will now be keeping an eye on the world's best as they go for gold at the Summer Olympics.
It's a proud moment, not only for me, but whole country, that India will be the part of jury member in upcoming Olympics 2024. So it's dream come true. I start my playing career. I was just 6-year-old from Dal Lake, and Alhamdulillah, now I achieve the ultimate, that is Olympics. Finally, we are there. India is there.
Canoeing and kayaking haven't been able to hit the high notes in the Indian sporting ecosystem, but Meer remains determined to change that. She is a highly regarded coach who wants Indian athletes to win medals at the big stage. She has served as coach of the women's national team, and her know-how of the sport has made her a well-respected name in the international arena. There will be no stage fright. She was a jury member at the Asian Games in China last year as well.
It was not easy to excel in international level, like being a Kashmiri girl when I start from Dal Lake. You know, we can say there was no such kind of awareness about sports. But, I believe never give up on your dreams, no matter how painful and difficult your journey is. Keep going and trust yourself. And nobody can stop you what you want to achieve.
The Indian Olympic Association has confirmed Meer's Paris stint in a letter sent to the Jammu and Kashmir government. It's a moment of pride for the sports lovers in the valley. Meer is a recipient of the government's State Award and also the Devi Award, which celebrates exceptional women who display dynamism and innovation in their work.
Bilkis Meer has become the first Indian woman to be a jury at the Paris Olympics this year. She's also the first Kashmiri to achieve this feat. And with her achievements, thousands of girls across the country are getting inspired to take up water sports as their career. With video journalist Feroz Idris Lord for WION World is One.
On that note, it's a wrap on this edition of Gravitas Tonight. This is me, Molly Gambhir, signing off. Thanks very much for watching.